I knew they weren't coming before I put the cap on. The confirmation didn't arrive as a dramatic message. It came as a casual voice note my mother sent while I was brushing my teeth in the dorm bathroom. Music thumped faintly in the background, the sound of a television crowd swelling and falling like weather. "We're setting up early," she said, cheerful, distracted. "Your dad invited a few people from work. You know how the Super Bowl is. We'll celebrate you properly later, okay?" I stared at my reflection longer than necessary. Toothpaste foamed at the corner of my mouth. For a moment I waited for the second part of the message, the correction, the laugh, the acknowledgement that of course they would be there. It didn't come. I rinsed my mouth and sent back a thumbs up. It felt easier than asking a question that would only force them to defend a choice they had already made. The ceremony itself was a blur of instructions and movement. Line up here. Turn when they call your name. Smile. Don't trip. I noticed how many families had coordinated outfits, how many phones were already raised before the first name was announced. I took a seat between two classmates who were nervously texting updates to their parents in the stands. No one texted me. When my name was called, the applause sounded like it belonged to someone else. Polite, evenly distributed, designed to move things along. I shook the dean's hand, accepted the diploma, and felt the weight of it settle in my palm. It was lighter than I expected. I walked back to my seat without scanning the crowd. I already knew what I wouldn't find. Afterward, the campus dissolved into clusters of people hugging, laughing, crying openly. I drifted toward the parking lot with my gown half unzipped, the cap already irritating me. I sat in my car and shut the door, sealing myself into a quiet that felt earned. That's when I cried, not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to release the pressure that had been building all morning. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and let it happen. No one knocked on the window. No one asked if I was okay. When it passed, I didn't feel empty. I felt clear. This wasn't a one-time oversight. This was a pattern finally visible because the stakes were public. They hadn't missed my graduation because something went wrong. They missed it because something else seemed more fun. I drove back to the dorm to pack the last of my things. Most rooms were already empty, doors propped open, families moving boxes and memories in tandem. I worked quickly, methodically, folding clothes, stacking books. By the time my phone rang, my car was already half loaded. It was my program advisor. "I didn't see your family," she said without preamble, not accusatory, observant. "I just wanted to check in." I told her they had other plans. I didn't explain. There was a pause. Then she said, "There's an opening in the fellowship we talked about last semester. The one out west. It starts sooner than expected." I remembered the conversation. A passing mention. A possibility I hadn't let myself want because it required leaving without a net. "They need confirmation by tonight," she added. "I thought of you because you don't seem tied down." I almost laughed at that. I thanked her and said I'd call back. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the blank wall where posters used to be. For the first time all day, I felt something like relief. Not because of the opportunity itself, but because someone had noticed my readiness without needing a family introduction. I booked the ticket before I could talk myself out of it. One way. 2 days later. I didn't tell my parents immediately. Not out of spite. I just didn't feel the urgency. They found out when my mother texted asking when we should schedule a graduation dinner. "I'm leaving town," I wrote, "for work." There were questions after that. Where? How long? Why didn't you tell us sooner? I answered politely. Briefly. I didn't explain the parking lot. I didn't mention the voice note. I didn't frame it as a consequence. I simply let the information exist. The new city didn't greet me with anything special. The airport was functional. The air smelled different. My apartment was smaller than advertised. The first night, I ate takeout on the floor and listened to unfamiliar sirens in the distance. I was lonely, but it was a clean loneliness. No waiting attached to it. Work filled the days quickly. I learned names. I made mistakes. I was corrected without being shamed. Authority showed up in clear ways: deadlines, feedback, expectations. When I met them, things moved forward. When I didn't, there were consequences I could understand. Weeks passed before my parents called again. Not because they missed me exactly, but because distance had finally registered as real. "You seem busy," my father said, mildly puzzled. "I am," I replied. There was a hesitation, as if he expected more. An explanation, an invitation. I didn't provide one. The power shift wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself. It lived in the absence of apology, in the steadiness of my tone, in the fact that I no longer needed them to witness my milestones for them to count. On the anniversary of my graduation, I found the diploma tucked into a drawer. I took it out, held it for a moment, then put it back. It wasn't bitterness that made me do it. It was understanding. Some ceremonies end where they're supposed to. Others only begin when you walk away alone.